Owning an entire country, imagine that for a moment. The global scenario of everyone attempting to purchase a nation would unfold into utter chaos. There are roughly 8 billion people on Earth. We have only about 195 recognized countries. This means a direct ratio of 41 million people for every single country. The arithmetic proves this impossible. Even if we considered only the wealthiest individuals, the top 1%, that is 80 million people, still far too many for 195 nations. The average land area of a country is approximately 760,000 square kilometers. If every person aimed to buy even a tiny fraction of one, a planetary scale land rush would erupt. Global financial markets would collapse instantly. The very concept of national currency would vanish. Current global gross domestic product sits around 105 trillion US dollars. This figure becomes meaningless. Existing international law would be rendered obsolete. Property deeds would become worthless papers. Think about it. The Earth's total landmass is about 149 million square kilometers. Dividing this by 8 billion people gives each person less than 20 square meters. That is smaller than a typical parking spot. Who would decide which 20 square meters one owns? This is not about real estate in a city. This is about sovereign territory. Over 175,000 cities would vanish as entities. Nations are not merely plots of land. They encompass infrastructure, they include natural resources, they contain cultural heritage. They hold millions of lives. The United States, for example, has a population of over 330 million people. Its GDP is $25 trillion. Who would possess such a complex entity? China, with its 1.4 billion citizens and $18 trillion economy, poses an even larger question. The smallest sovereign state is Vatican City at just 0.44 square kilometers. Even this tiny nation supports a population of around 800 people. Could one individual genuinely purchase it? The concept defies all economic principles. The price of a country is not fixed. It is a complex calculation of its assets, its people, its strategic value. This value fluctuates dramatically. There is no simple market for nations. No country is truly for sale in the traditional sense. Some historical land deals exist. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803, for example, saw the United States acquire 2.14 million square kilometers from France for $15 million. That was about $7 per square kilometer. Today, this land is worth trillions. Russia sold Alaska to the United States in 1867 for $7.2 million. Just 2 cents per acre. These were sales between governments, not individuals, and certainly not every person buying an entire country. Global real estate value is over $350 trillion. If suddenly every person had the financial means to buy a nation, the existing wealth distribution would be overturned. The 8 richest billionaires currently possess more wealth than the bottom half of the world's population. Their combined net worth is over $1 trillion. This is a vast sum, but it cannot buy 195 countries. The total value of all global assets, real estate, stocks, bonds, is estimated to be around $400 trillion. This value is a human construct. It relies on stable governance and predictable markets. Such stability would evaporate, a scramble for ownership would ensue. Large nations like Russia, spanning over 17 million square kilometers, would be highly coveted. Smaller, resource-rich nations, like those in the Middle East, with vast oil reserves, would also be targets. Saudi Arabia alone possesses over 170 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. Its economic output is over $1 trillion annually. Would its value be simply its oil or its entire state apparatus? The very idea implies a world where borders dissolve, where citizenship loses its meaning, where loyalty shifts from nation to owner. This would spark unprecedented conflict. Over 110 million people are currently forcibly displaced globally. This number would explode. Nearly half the world's population lives in urban areas. Consider the human cost. Billions of people would wake up to find their nation owned by an individual. Their rights, their freedoms, their very identity would be in question. Would they become subjects of a private entity? Would they retain their citizenship? The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states everyone has the right to a nationality. This right would be fundamentally challenged. Mass displacement would be inevitable. People would flee nations they no longer recognized as theirs. The global refugee crisis, involving tens of millions, would pale in comparison. Entire populations would become stateless. The logistics of managing such a world are staggering. Food supply chains would break, water distribution systems would fail, healthcare infrastructure would crumble. Who would maintain the roads? Who would provide security? Who would manage waste? These are all functions of government. and governments would cease to exist in their current form. The military might of 195 nations would either become private armies or dissolve into chaos. The United States military budget alone is over $800 billion a year. China's is $300 billion. What happens to these forces? Global trade volumes around $28 trillion would cease. The world's 25 million kilometers of paved roads would fall into disrepair. The legal ramifications are profound. International treaties, trade agreements, climate accords, all would be null and void. The Paris Agreement, which involves 194 nations committed to combating climate change, would be irrelevant. The World Trade Organization, facilitating over $28 trillion in global trade, would cease operations. Intellectual property rights would be unenforceable. Patents, copyrights, trademarks, all would be meaningless. The global legal framework, built over centuries, would collapse overnight. This is not a simple transaction of goods, it is a dismantling of civilization as we know it. The implications extend to space. Who would control satellites? Who would regulate space debris? The Outer Space Treaty establishes space as the common heritage of humankind. But if nations are gone, who enforces this? Even Antarctica, governed by a treaty that prevents any country from claiming it would likely become a battleground for individual ownership. Its vast scientific resources, its untouched wilderness, would they be exploited without regulation? 70% of the Earth's surface is water. Who would own the oceans? The International Criminal Court would have no jurisdiction. The environmental impact would be catastrophic. Without national environmental protections, private owners might prioritize profit over sustainability. Deforestation could accelerate, pollution could go unchecked. The Amazon rainforest, covering over 5.5 million square kilometers, crucial for global oxygen production, could be clear-cut by a single owner. The Great Barrier Reef, a living structure over 2,300 kilometers long, home to thousands of species, could be plundered. Global warming would intensify without coordinated international efforts. The planet's average temperature has already risen by 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This would worsen dramatically. Biodiversity loss would accelerate at an unprecedented rate. Species extinction rates are already 100 to 1,000 times higher than natural background rates. This scenario would push millions more species to the brink. The very air we breathe, the water we drink, would be at risk. It's a terrifying prospect. Our 8 billion strong population relies on these finite resources. Over 600,000 dams would be unmanaged. The cultural loss would be immense. Thousands of languages spoken across the globe, unique traditions, historical sites, all would be subject to the whims of individual owners. The pyramids of Egypt, the Great Wall of China, the Colosseum in Rome, would they be preserved or turned into private resorts, or simply left to decay? There are over 7,000 living languages in the world. Many are already endangered. This scenario would likely hasten their disappearance, cultural identity linked to a specific land, and people would dissolve. 1,000 years of history in one particular region might mean nothing to a new owner. The diversity that makes our world rich would be severely diminished. Imagine one billionaire owning France. Would French culture still thrive under private rule? Would the Louvre Museum with its 35,000 pieces of art remain open to the public or become a private collection? The very idea of national patrimony would vanish. It is a grim picture. Religious freedoms might also be suppressed. There are over 4,000 distinct religions practiced worldwide. These might face immediate threats under private ownership. UNESCO World Heritage sites numbering over 1,000 would lose all protection. This radical hypothetical challenges our fundamental understanding of societal structure. For thousands of years, humans have organized into tribes, then city-states, then nations. This provided order, it offered protection, it allowed for shared goals. Removing this framework would throw humanity back into a primitive state of conflict and competition. A world of 8 billion individual landowners, each with a 20 square meter plot, is unworkable. A world where 195 individuals own all the countries is tyrannical. The power imbalance would be absolute, no checks, no balances. The current system, though imperfect, offers at least some semblance of governance. It offers public services, it provides a platform for diplomacy. The United Nations, with its 193 member states, attempts to foster global cooperation. All of this would evaporate. The notion is utterly absurd, yet it highlights the intricate web of relationships that bind us together as a global society. It underscores the value of collective ownership in a sense, the idea that a nation belongs to its people, not to a singular individual or even a handful of individuals. It is a complex system of shared responsibility and mutual dependence. This thought experiment reveals just how fragile our global order is, how reliant we are on established norms, how quickly chaos can emerge when fundamental structures are removed. Over 390 million registered vehicles would have no road rules. Consider the global implications of such an extreme power shift. Who would control the world's freshwater resources? Roughly 3% of the world's water is freshwater, and less than 1% is easily accessible. Rivers like the Nile, passing through 11 countries, would become contested assets. The Amazon River, flowing through 9 nations, would also face new ownership disputes. Countries currently sharing vital resources would find their agreements nullified. The concept of transboundary water management, essential for billions, would vanish. This would lead to resource wars on an unimaginable scale. Food security would also be jeopardized. About 800 million people globally already face chronic food insecurity. This number would skyrocket. Agricultural lands would be owned by individuals who might prioritize cash crops for profit over feeding populations. The 570 million farms worldwide feeding the planet would undergo massive restructuring. Most farms are small family-owned operations. Their existence would be threatened. Global energy grids providing power to billions would fragment. Education systems would cease to function. Over 1.5 billion students globally attend schools. Who would fund these institutions? Who would set curricula? Healthcare for 7.8 billion people would disappear. The World Health Organization coordinating global health efforts would have no states to coordinate. Diseases would spread unchecked. Pandemics would devastate populations without coordinated responses. The global economy relies on movement of goods and people. Airports, seaports, and land borders would either shut down or become private toll booths for their new owners. Tourism, a $7 trillion industry annually, would grind to a halt. Trade routes, essential for global supply chains, would be disrupted. Consider the Strait of Malacca, a crucial shipping lane carrying 1/4 of the world's traded goods. If one person owned it, they could control global commerce. This level of unilateral control would be unbearable. Public transportation systems serving billions daily would collapse. Over 100,000 commercial flights daily would be grounded. The very notion of human rights would be extinguished, child labor laws would vanish, environmental protections would cease, workplace safety regulations would disappear. It would be a return to an unregulated, brutal existence for the vast majority of humanity. The concept of justice would become arbitrary. Courts would belong to the owner of the land. Laws would be whatever the owner dictated. There would be no independent judiciary, no due process, no appeal. Criminal justice systems that today incarcerate over 10 million people globally would be completely revamped or abolished. The idea of public good would become meaningless. Every service, every resource, every piece of land would be a private commodity. This is not merely a theoretical exercise in economics or political science. It is a thought experiment about the fabric of human society itself. It challenges our fundamental understanding of what it means to be human in a world where everything is owned. Indigenous land rights, currently recognized in 149 countries, would be completely ignored. Interpol, with its 195 member countries, would cease to exist. This extreme scenario highlights the deep complexities of governance and shared resources. It shows that nations are more than just land. They are living, breathing systems of people, culture, and infrastructure. The value of a country is not just its economic output, it is also its history, its identity, its people's collective future. The idea that a single person could simply buy this ignores centuries of human development and political evolution. It ignores the sacrifices made for national sovereignty. It ignores the struggles for self-determination. Millions have fought and died for their homelands, for their right to govern themselves, for their independence. These concepts have profound emotional and historical weight. They cannot be quantified or sold like a commodity. This hypothetical also brings into sharp relief the massive disparities in global wealth. It exaggerates them to an absurd degree. It forces us to confront the ethical implications of extreme wealth concentration. What if one person had so much money they could buy a nation? What responsibility would come with that? What dangers? It is a question that pushes the boundaries of our imagination. It underscores the importance of international cooperation. It reveals the fragility of our interconnected world. It is a powerful reminder that some things are beyond a price tag. Some things should always remain in the collective trust of humanity. Not for individual sale or ownership. The implications are far-reaching. They touch every aspect of human existence, from the smallest daily interaction to the grandest geopolitical strategies. It is a testament to the intricate ballet of global governance that our world functions at all. This thought experiment serves as a stark warning. The concept of one individual owning an entire nation is fundamentally incompatible with a just and equitable world. It would lead to a dystopia beyond anything imagined in science fiction. Over 9,000 nuclear warheads exist globally. Who would control them? Nations today grapple with this complex issue. Individual owners would introduce an unprecedented level of danger. It would be an end to the modern era. An end to global cooperation, an end to shared human values. The very idea of progress would halt. Human development indices measure things like life expectancy, education, and standard of living. These would all plummet. Life expectancy globally is around 73 years. It would likely drop significantly. Literacy rates currently at 87% would fall. This is not merely a transfer of assets. It is a fundamental shift in reality. It is a future no one would desire. It represents an ultimate breakdown of everything that gives our societies meaning and structure. The United Nations Security Council, with its 5 permanent members, would be dissolved, creating a power vacuum. This is a vision of global societal collapse. It signifies great loss of collective human achievement.